Hey, this is Chef Scott Simpson, and you're listening to the Eat Y'all podcast.
This is Chef Jim Smith, and you're listening to the Eat Y'all podcast.
Welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast, where we discuss the struggles and successes of the farmers, food producers, and chefs who are working to get better ingredients into restaurants today and to ensure their availability in the future.
This episode of the Eat Y'all podcast is made possible by a partnership between Alabama Gulf Seafood and Gulf Shores and Orange Beach Tourism. Check out the show notes to find links to the people and places mentioned in this episode. Thanks again for listening to the Eat Y'all podcast. I'm your host, Andy Chapman, and we're going to wrap up our mini season, if you will, from down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, with two kings of seafood, as we dubbed them. Both of them have represented the state of Alabama in it's called the Great American Seafood Cook-Off. Scott Simpson just won the Alabama Seafood Cook-Off this year. Chef Jim Smith represented Alabama a couple of years ago. So it was really great to visit with them and talk about their journeys and hear a little bit about their takeaways from Chef Camp, learning about Alabama seafood from the inside. I think you'll enjoy this episode. Stick around. So welcome back to the Eat Y'all podcast. I'm here with two champions of seafood, champions of culinary delight, champions at life, I would say too. So I want to welcome Chef Scott Simpson and Chef Jim Smith. And that the alliteration was accidental, right?
If it alliterates, it's better. No matter what it is, if it alliterates, it's better.
So, guys, welcome to the Eat Y'all podcast. Welcome to Chef Camp. Jim, is this your first Chef Camp ever?
Yeah, this is my first Chef Camp ever, and it's been an awesome experience. We've been planning this one for over 3 years, it feels like, and it has finally happened, and it's been a great experience.
Yeah, I was in my 30s when we started talking about this. That's true. That is true. We're sitting on the porch in Gulf Shores, Alabama, Lower Alabama, LA, as folks call it. So we've been talking about seafood to chefs. And so, Scott, where are you from, first of all?
West Coast. I'm a native Californian.
Native California. Did you lose a bet? Like, why are you in Alabama?
I took a long circular route, but, the short story is that I wanted to get to a point where I could, progress in my career as far as like a instructor, more of a mentor, and an opportunity came up to work with the university and do the culinary portion of their hospitality program. And that was in conjunction with still an operational executive chef position at a hotel. And it was with a company that I really admired. So I took the opportunity and did that. And then that just turned into another big lifelong dream, which is being the chef of my own restaurant. And so I'm a chef and co-owner of the Depot restaurant now in downtown Auburn.
An SEC town, an SEC powerhouse at one time. And Jim, you're the chef owner of a restaurant. Tell us about that.
Yeah, my restaurant is the Hummingbird Way, and we are mostly an oyster bar, but we do lots of other cool stuff there as well. And we've been open. We opened in January of 2020, which is, got to be literally the worst time to open a restaurant since maybe the Great Depression. But we've made it. And so we had 2 months of real business and then, pandemic craziness. But as someone who really poured everything that they had into opening this restaurant, there's no way that we were giving up after 2 months and no matter what the world would throw at us. So we've survived and we've been thriving and we've been winning over customers the whole time.
And you're bringing kind of an upscale elegance to Mobile, Alabama?
Yeah. Mobile is a great city and it's a great food city. It's a great historical city. And it's a city that I fell in love with really before moving there. And for me, there are great restaurants in Mobile, but every time I would go there, I would just think there just aren't enough great restaurants here. And there are some really great ones. And I wanted to be a part of that list. And it's just been a pleasure to operate a restaurant there. We are, I would say like a fancy oyster bar. We are a nice restaurant. We're upscale, but we're happy to serve people in flip-flops and shorts. And if you show up in a tuxedo on your way to a Mardi Gras ball, that's also very welcome. So we're a cool restaurant with a fun vibe, and we serve lots of great seafood.
And you kind of hit a niche in Mobile doing that, I think.
Yeah, I think the people in Mobile are hungry for good food, and they love to support local farms, and they love the seafood industry, and they love everything that comes from around Mobile, which means that, a good oyster bar is right up there at the top of the list.
That's fantastic. And Scott, you were talking about, and we're going to get deeper into seafood. I promise you we'll get knee deep into oysters and crabs and oyster tong and the whole deal. But you mentioned something that I wanted to kind of commend you on, and you were talking about the opportunity to mentor others. You're a little older than most of the chefs in this house today.
Thank you.
How old are you?
Just turned 59.
59.
In October, just a few days ago.
So you touched on kind of mentoring and molding, and I noticed that same kind of mindset from Robbie, who's also a chef in Auburn, kind of associated with your group. Talk a little bit more about kind of a mindset of like bringing the high tide raises all the ships, and not just taking the best people you can get talent wise, but the best people you can get in bringing the talent and rising them up to the level that you need them to be. What is that like? And what can a chef listening to this go, how do I get better people around me?
Well, first of all, I've been fortunate to have blessed to have incredible opportunities, and I've had a lot of successes, and I'm a pretty driven, competitive person. And when I was younger, it was very aggressive, and I would be that person that was looking to build my credentials, build my resume, stack up accomplishments, and sort of pursue being the absolute best in the world. That was like going to push that way. And it was pretty selfishly focused, but that ambition was good. It helped me learn and grow and develop at a fast rate. But there comes a time when two things happen simultaneously. One is that I just saw other people that were not lucky enough to have the great mentorship that I had, not fortunate enough to be in the great environments that I was able to be in, not fortunate enough to have, I had great parents and all that. And so I just look at the profession and say, there's a need for that. And you're not fully helping people if you're just yelling at them if they're not doing something perfectly. And so there's so much more to being a chef. So that's one side of it. But I would just parlay that to say that, especially at these times, you have to change your mindset to be able to look at every drop of potential in somebody and figure out how you're going to get them to be able to build a team with those individuals. It's the pool of people who are driven and excited about a career in being a culinarian are so few and far between. And so that becomes a necessity now.
And you're saying that as a guy who's in a college town with a hospitality program, you're still and I think every chef that I've talked to in the last 18 months, when I'm saying, how's it going? They're like, I need people. And I know Jim's over there nodding to everything you're saying as well, because I don't think it's, 3.5, 4 hours south. It's probably really, really similar. And Jim continues to nod, which y'all can't hear, but he's agreeing with us. So we're going to talk about Jim. I think we mentioned in the last podcast that Jim's glasses broke. And so we have called him Shades because he's wearing his shades, and it is now 11:10 p.m. Jim's got his shades on.
It's way better to see in sunglasses than to not see.
I agree completely. And I just feel like you're cooler than you ever imagined you could be.
I'm going to go get mine.
So I wore mine a little bit last night in solidarity. I want to thank you for sticking it out and just rolling with it, because you're cool enough to do that, Jim.
No, that's what you got to do, So roll with the punches and wear sunglasses if you need to.
So we're to seafood camp, seafood focused. We've seen a lot of seafood in the last 24, 48 hours. We've tasted a lot. We were at the water's edge today, but I want to take, and we'll start with you, Jim. When you go back to your childhood, or whenever it was you had your first memorable seafood bite, what was that moment? What was it, at 8 years old? Was it at 18? When was the first time you had seafood?
Now, for me, my earliest memories of seafood definitely involve two things, both of which we have eaten a lot of on this trip, and they are raw oysters and fried crab claws. And those two things will probably forever stay at the top of my list of favorite things. But I can definitely remember as a young child, like there was nothing I was more excited about than going to the local oyster bar and having literally those two things, fried crab claws and raw oysters. And I still, to this day, love them immensely, and that they're my favorite things to eat. They're my favorite things to serve. As a chef, you're watching your line cooks fry the crab claws, and I'm always having to do some quality control to make sure that the crab claws are good on the way out the door. They're just really two of my favorite ingredients, and probably my earliest seafood memories. And those, and not really seafood, but right there on the same part of the list is just a fried brim, which any good Southerner will tell you that whether you're eating crappie or brim or whatever the small little pond fish you're catching, just some fried brim, like those are the things that are really the seafood and not seafood from my childhood that really bring back those memories of like what it is about seafood that I really like, the nostalgic part of food.
I want to, before we get to Scott's seafood story, the alliteration just keeps flowing. The crab claws we had at lunch today at the Lighthouse Restaurant in Bayou La Batre, home of the largest seafood operations in kind of the Gulf Coast region, probably, were I think they're the best I've ever had. Biggest, meatiest, perfect breading. Agree or disagree?
I agree. And there is some debate about what do you use, cornmeal or flour? And for me, crab claws have to be done in flour, and it makes a giant difference. And the ones today were definitely fried in flour, and it's
very light.
It's very light, but you get that it's more of a chicken fry than a fish fry, where you would think about having a lot of cornmeal, but it makes a big difference to me. Those were awesome and huge. And
they're the biggest ones I've ever seen. And I hate, you get one that's like the size of your pinky and you're trying to get 1/8 of a teaspoon of meat off of it. It's kind of like the juice ain't worth the squeeze.
I know. Definitely worth the squeeze.
Scott, weigh in on crab claws.
Well, I am not the expert here. And so I am always fascinated to learn. And I take the comments that I hear and the love of a lot of these items as just an educational thing for me. They may not be my cup of tea. I don't have the nostalgia behind it. So I'm looking at it kind of a little more from an alien perspective. And so I look at that dish today and I'm thinking what a great chef Jim is. And he's saying theirs were perfect, probably some of the best. And you're saying those things. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's the benchmark by the experts. So that's kind of what I'm doing at this point. I enjoyed them, but I can't quite, because I wasn't raised in it, understand the cult following for some of the dishes at this point. Honestly.
Oh, look. And those crab claws. So, and I had the benefit of sitting beside Ernie Anderson, who's the, I call him the mayor of seafood down there. He's on the industry board. He knows everybody. He's probably related to most of them. If, one way or another, he's connected. And so I'm kind of getting a little inside baseball. I'm like, Ernie, God, these are huge. He's like, yeah, they sell them here that, they don't sell them everywhere else. Like they take the prime crab claws and they go through so many of them that I think you could get them that big, but you're going to have to fight somebody else out that has been buying the biggest one. Cause I've got a lot of restaurants where we live in Mississippi have crab claws, but they're like, those are size 3 and ours are 1.5. I mean, it's just like they're literally half the size. The claw may be similarly length, but as far as the actual meat on there, there's no comparison. So some of that is knowing where your food comes from. You guys met crab processors,
right?
You can say, hey, look, what do I have to do to get I want to start it just Friday nights. How many can you get me? We'll sell them out. And having that relationship, right? You can pull something like that off before you can buy, 200 pounds a week, which I bet they.
Yeah.
We saw 200 pounds in 10 minutes we were in there.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
I would say that those portions that they brought to our tables were probably like 2-pounder portions. I would think that's probably at least like 2 pounds in each of those.
It was epic.
Those were great plates.
So in the world of seafood, we saw a lot of things today. What in the industry side of things, whether it's the oysters we started with, oysters we finished with, like what kind of tickled your fancy a little bit, made you go, huh, I didn't know that. I've never seen that.
I've been down for one other tour before. So, I was learning little things. It doesn't have to do with like an individual product, but I did spend some time talking with some of the employees just as the tours were taking place. Right. And like I said, I was very impressed and struck by the longevity and the community that's working in this industry. So we heard it at the top. I understand if you're, heir to a seafood throne and it's being passed down through your dynasty. That makes sense.
Right.
But when you're talking about the guy who's taking out the crab shells, telling you that his mother started with the company when they first opened, and he's been working there since he was 16 and he's now 72.
And he retired once, right?
And he already retired once and came back. That says something to me. And so I was really struck by that and thought, this is a passionate, larger than life family. That's when they say it's a family owned operation, their owner's down to that guy taking out the crab shells. And that was something to me that I thought is, you don't want to lose that. That's like some kind of Japanese art that you can't let pass away, right?
Yeah. Well, and what does that say about, the care? And I mean, she was saying like, if we try to go pick crabs today and try to sit down where any of those ladies or a couple of those guys were and do that job, getting paid by the pound, we would be very hungry at the end of the day. Or we may not, because we just like, it's like when you're shelling pecans, one for me, one for the bowl, one for me, one for the bowl. That's what happens when I shell pecans or peel shrimp or do crawfish after the crawfish boil, when you're like trying to make tails for the next thing. But I mean, that says a lot about that passion of the individual, that they have the skill and that they have done it for that long, right? It's amazing. All right. So you're in Auburn, the depot. What's the top selling seafood on your menu? There are top two. I mean, you don't have to run the POS numbers right this second, but what do you feel like moves the best?
Our restaurant, the menu changes all the time, and the sets and the ingredients change all the time. And it's a competitive menu. And so depending on what it's up against changes completely what's the most popular. I'll tell you that the dish that I made for the seafood competition for Alabama,
that he won,
that dish, when we put on the menu, sort of was like a unbalanced scale. It sold really well every night.
What did talk about that dish?
It was basically a yellow edge grouper, which is a delicious fish. It's not as bountiful as I would like it to be as far as the sustainability goes. But it's my, being from the West Coast, for me, it was an intriguing fish, and I really was impressed by the flavor and the quality of it. So we used that, and I wrapped it. I seasoned it like you do Veracruz style in Mexico. I have kind of a heritage from Mexico. And so you squeeze lime all over it and salt, and you let it sit for a few minutes before you sear it. That's kind of starts the protein cooking a little bit. It makes it even firmer.
So it's kind of turning the outside edge into ceviche before you even...
Yeah. And then you sear it, and it tightens all the proteins up a little bit.
It's pretty smart. Jim, have you ever done anything that smart?
No.
Have you won a seafood competition?
Yes.
There you go.
He does different smarter things. So I just basically took a roasted poblano, again, kind of going with some peppers we had locally, but also that background of the Latin aspect. And then I made the other side of my family's Italian. So I did a risotto, and I did featuring local items, Conecuh bacon, some local Gulf shrimp, some fresh corn during that season was available. Made like a street corn risotto with the shrimp in it. And then that was the base, and they had the poblano, and then I made the Veracruz sauce, which is a tomato-based sauce with capers and olives and cinnamon. And
so you basically told a story of your life and Alabama and seafood all on a plate, and it resonated.
Yeah, I tried to do something I was comfortable with, sort of my roots that I enjoy, the things I like to eat, that I would put together in a mashup at my house, and just tried to use as many of the great Alabama products that I could. You know, there's a lot to choose from, but I just had to pick what I could.
So, and I love what you were talking about, like knowing the ingredient. You were talking about that particular fish and kind of the little bit about that, and the corn that's in season and those sorts of things. Jim, when you go to the origin, when you know, get your feet in the sand by the oyster farm that's growing and, you know, got thousands of oysters ready to get to tables like yours. How does that play into your, what can I do with this? Like, is there anything that like ties that to when your creativity juices are going, and you've got, I saw these people, I know their story, I know the story of this farm. Does that all kind of work together in some form or fashion?
Yeah. And to me, that was probably one of the most interesting places where we visited was the Admiral. It's called the Admiral, right? The Admiral Oyster
Admiral
Farm.
Shellfish.
Admiral
Shellfish
Shellfish
Company. Yeah.
And I've been to sort of the oyster companies that have been around for a long time, but I've never been to one we're visiting them before their first official harvest goes to market. And it was really great to see how enthusiastic and how incredibly excited they are that they're almost ready to go to sell their oyster to the world. And they really know all about the specific terroir of where they're located. And they're talking about how much salt water they get versus other farms. And, they're talking about the geographic positioning and the way that there's sandy bottoms and all of those things that go to make their oyster unique are the types of things that a chef needs to think about when trying to get those creative juices flowing. And it always helps too you can't replace like knowing where ingredients come from. Like there's no better way to understand what you're working with than to talk to the people who are growing it and to see where it's coming from and to stand on that sandy shore and watch what's happening there. And those are always the first steps for me when starting the creative process. And it's not just about the way it tastes or the way it looks, but it's about knowing a little bit more about that ingredient and then letting that be the springboard from which you start to add or subtract or do whatever you need to do to make it be, to use that ingredient in the dish that you want the end result to be.
I like how you put all that together, Jim. That's well said. All right. So we're doing a thing called Chef Camp. Scott's been to how many, Scott?
I think this is my third.
So you did pecans, catfish and rice, or
just catfish and pecans?
Catfish and pecans. And here, and Jim, I don't know how you haven't been to a chef camp.
Me neither.
But we've
waving
been
my fist in the air.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, no.
So first of all, Jim, would you come back?
Yeah, I would definitely come back. This has been a great event. Like it's always really good to network with other chefs and meet people. And especially if you, like for the past 3 years, you've been locked in your restaurant trying to figure out how the pandemic works. It's really great to make it back out in the world and to reconnect with not only people who are like you or who are going through the same sort of things, but to also reconnect with the ingredients that you're using in your restaurant and to even try to reach out and embrace those ingredients even more. Everyone has been in a mess the past couple of years, but just making it out of the restaurant and being cooking for people in a non-restaurant space. And part of what makes this event so cool is that we're cooking for the makers and the people who we visited all along our seafood path. And it's really great to sort of, there's a real good synchronicity there. You've got the people who are making it and the people who are cooking it and the people serving it. And we all sit down to dinner together and just have a great experience. And it's been a great thing, a wonderful experience. I would recommend it to any chef or farmer or maker or whoever y'all are looking to invite to participate. I would do it again in a heartbeat. And it's been a very enjoyable event.
What do you say, and either one of y'all pipe in, that what's the, like, a singular takeaway that, okay, so at the end of Chef Camp, I mean, you talked about networking, you talked about connecting with the ingredients. Like, is there a, that's the thing that I think is most valuable from this?
One thing, again, another peculiar aspect was his name Scott Campbell? What was the guy's, who was the marshal?
Scott
Bannon.
Scott Bannon.
Colonel Scott Bannon to you.
Okay. Yeah. So that was impressive to me, his knowledge of all the operations and the mutual respect and the working together of this quality, safety, procedural, just very accountability, huge accountability. So why that's important to me was because I could see that he was active and present in the community.
Yeah.
Okay. I will tell you that at this particular time, I'm not going to talk so much about Chef Camp, but just talk about the products for a second in America. At this particular time, when you're thinking about, there's been movies out, documentaries that talk about, sustainability and things, right? So you really can't control things that far out of your view, right? So we've had an instance with a particular product, let's just say, that we were purchasing. It was a great kind of boutique, highest standards of sustainability, so good that we were importing it from another country because we felt this is supporting a world cause. It may not be local, but their efforts are setting the bar for the rest of the industry. We're going to buy their product and feature it in our restaurant. And we, and people like the product for sure. So we were doing that, and they got bought up by one of the largest seafood companies in the world because they wanted this boutique brand name to their portfolio. They immediately started disassembling all the quality side of it and trying to mass produce it. And the main people who were the passionate guardians of that whole integrity left the company. And so I started noticing differences in the quality of the product. And I'm like, how is this changing so much? And upon a little investigation over on the other side of the world, then I uncover what's been happening. This today made me very reassured with the products from Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
Because what I saw today, and I felt like, I can trust and have a little more confidence in actual sustainability by buying this local stuff than I can going to some supposed world award-winning product from.
I mean, you're nailing one of the awesome things about what I see happening from this Chef Camp. And to your point on Colonel Bannon, who demanded that I call him Scott, so I'm going to still call him Colonel Bannon because I think that sounds very prestigious. But he, I feel like, was the Andy Griffith figure of the water because he knows. I mean, he was describing this guy that he had arrested multiple times and, whatever. And we won't mention his name, but he was talking about, and then, and I had a warrant for him for doing something, and I went to check, and he's like hanging from his rigging, and he's like, I had to go save him because he like fell down the, but he's the guy who knows he knows everybody in his Mayberry of the water, 17,000 acres or whatever it was that he said he patrols, and kind of is responsible for the quality of that. And so because of that, when you know all of those people, I mean, y'all, when he walked in, I had this immediate reaction of, which one of my chefs is getting arrested or who in here is about to walk out in cuffs? Like one of the employees or like what's happening. And then I'm like, oh, he's part of the crew. Okay. All right. This is cool. And honestly, he was probably one of my favorite people to talk to today because like you said, Scott, he's got this knowledge of the industry. He could tell you there's 43 people with gillnet permits, and those are, and if you're listening to this and you haven't heard the episode, we did about 20 minutes with him. Fantastic interview because the guy just knows what's up. But he talks about gill net fishing and tonging and all the different ways that seafood gets to the processors that get to your plates. And
yeah, he is great. And he and Chris Blankenship, who is another one who is way more big politician these days. But those guys grew up on the water together. And the thing about those guys that are so cool is, like, yes, they are policing the water, but those guys, like, know the science behind all of it. Like, they understand things like the differences in the nets, and they understand where which small tract is being oyster tonged this morning. And then they understand all of they understand the science behind why those laws exist. And that's what makes those guys
he's regulating the harvest, where they go out to rake for oysters, because he knows the water better than they do.
Yeah.
He's going to tell them a more productive place to get oysters rather than overfishing someplace that is depleted. How is that?
That's so brilliant because, and y'all, I'm not like Mr. Let's get more government in every possible corner, but it's really smart to have like, okay, guys, so here's the grid. Here's where y'all been doing. We're going to move you to a new spot. And anybody who's ever fished a bunch or hunted, I mean, you hunt the same green field every day for a week or two, you're not going to see the same deer because they're going to get run off and they're going to go somewhere else. But if you move it around and mix it up, you're going to have much better luck. And he's figured out the science and the method to communicate with, the fishing community, and has the relationship to go, hey guys, let's do this. And it helps he's funded by, he told me that it's not tax money, but it is licenses and, but he's funded by them being successful.
Yeah.
Because the tags go with the bags and the bags go to the processor and the processors go to y'all. So it's like the better job they can do with that resource, the better everything else works. And I just think that's brilliant.
Yeah. And, not only it's just one of those things where they do such an amazing job at what they do. And like, not only that, but, they are the dudes who are getting called, like, if a boat is like stranded in the middle of the bay, or like if they're searching for somebody on the water, like they're like part of those first responding teams who are involved. Really what those guys do is totally amazing. And every time I'm the same way with you. Every time I talk to them about like limits or numbers or what's going on in the artificial reefs, like they know everything, and they are just a brilliant resource for what is happening in the local seafood world.
And I wish I could have shared our lunch conversation, because we started talking about cadaver recovery and all that stuff. And he had a lot of good stories that are probably not great for the podcast, but just the kind of work and the sorts of things he's been part of to serve the public is, through tragedy and all sorts of things. And seriously, he talks about we're not going to spend this whole episode talking about how awesome Colonel Ben is, but it really was like, he just loves what he's doing. And he said, I work about 1% of the time. The rest of the time, I'm just out doing what I like to do.
Yeah.
And that's the guy you want in that position. He said, I wake up and get to go have fun. And I kind of think, about what I'm doing. And, I'm at work right now with you guys on a porch looking out at the Gulf of Mexico, literally. So, all right, final seafood thoughts that you have before we get into the lightning round. We're going to keep score in the lightning round. So
score. Okay.
Well, we got the two kings of
final
seafood.
Thoughts.
Okay. Any other thing that you think people need to know about Alabama seafood industry, things you saw, the giraffes? Go wherever you need to go, Scott.
I really think that the Gulf is, the products that they're doing are improving. The quality is improving, the consistency is improving, the care and technology, kind of the processes, I would say, are improving. And there was testimony of that from several people, the leaders there. And I like that because, I've only been in this area a short time, but I had toured it when I first came down here. And it was a little shaky, in my opinion. I'm used to going to a lot of different countries and kind of like inspecting things, thinking, is this safe to put in a a name brand hotel? Am I going to, or am I endangering the corporation here? I'm looking at things like that way. So when I came down here, I thought, they've been through some hard times financially. And I thought, they're kind of struggling to keep.
I mean, we didn't have the oil spill.
Right. I didn't, and there were storms and things. And I don't know if it was, what I'd say, struggling to keep things afloat, but their operations were, running tight, thin. And this time I came down and I'm like, new machinery. Oh, new this. Oh, new plant there. Oh, that's a nice boat. Oh, those kind of things were in place now. So that's encouraging. And I think that means that they're doing their part well, and we can have the confidence in those products even more so.
Right.
And I think that, it's something to kind of brag about when you're doing your menu, something to showcase and feature proudly on your menu. Right. And so that's something that I think it was a very good timing for us to come to this camp again and kind of just remind me about that, because again, otherwise you're just sort of receiving products and handling it secondhand.
You don't have to all shucks. Well, this is just Alabama seafood. You can actually go premium. We're not getting something from we're not getting shrimp from Indonesia. Like, these are our shrimp, and you're going to like them, and they're going to be the better, right? I mean,
we had them tonight.
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Right.
Have y'all ever had Ernie's? Well,
I have.
Yeah. I mean, the head on, all the beauty. Tremendous. That was one of my favorite things I had tonight. By the way, Jim Smith, good gracious. Oyster dressing, son.
Yeah, look, I that's one of my favorite things to make. And when it gets to be this time of year, it's definitely oyster dressing time.
Yep. Thanksgiving to go.
So, Jim, can we count on you to email us the oyster dressing recipe that we can put in the show notes? Because I think...
Yes, definitely.
I think people need the oyster dressing recipe. Hopefully, some of us took pictures. I was running around while y'all were cooking. I didn't even get to play in the kitchen at all this time, but obviously I wasn't needed because y'all killed it. I didn't even get to chop onions, but no, you guys were amazing at dinner. And what I love about the dinner part of what we did with this chef camp and so many others is the people who bust their tails growing, harvesting, spending. I mean, they spend their life's work to get an ingredient that you spend an hour on. And they get to see how you treat it and what you did to elevate it, and how every time we've done this, they're blown away by their own ingredient that they've never had taste that good. Right. And so it's a testament to what you guys do and the craft and the passion that you guys bring to the table for people who've, they raised this thing, they grow these grits, the corn that, whatever. And when they come away smiling, going, okay, that was new, that was different. I love that. That's a magical thing that happens. And it's that connection of the chef and the farmer at the table that truly is, it's the secret sauce to success. Because if you guys know where your ingredients comes, you're never any better than the ingredients you start with.
Right. I would add one thing. You asked Jim actually the question about, the impression and of getting that close to the product and meeting the people. And I would say that, I worked with one chef, and he used to kind of take the humblest of ingredients and talk to me about them in such a way as though they were like this, fresh $1,000 truffle or something. Right. And he just really impressed upon me about that kind of mentality with every ingredient and the care and that he was buying and how to work with them, Well, when you meet the farmers, oyster farmer, or you meet the fisherman, or, Anna or whoever, and you're talking to them and you understand, like I said, that legacy and what they're doing and the care and everything else, the pride that they're taking in the product and all the love that's gone into the work. Let's just say the work, watching those guys open just the pallets of oysters and things, right? So, when you do that, it does impress upon you to take a little more care with the product and make sure that you're doing it justice and honoring, their craft and their trade.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
The person, I'm thinking of the person now, not just the product and everything behind it too. I'm thinking about the face of, what they're doing, and they're trying to, that oyster company is trying to start it rolling, trying to stay in business next year.
Yeah, just like all of us. Did you know that 30 million pounds of fresh seafood are caught off the stunning 53-mile coast of Alabama each year? Alabama Gulf Seafood and Gulf Shores Orange Beach Tourism recently hosted the Eat Y'all Chef Camp where this episode was recorded. To learn more about Alabama Gulf Seafood, visit eatalabamaseafood.com. And to plan your next culinary beach adventure, visit gulfshores.com. All right, so we're gonna jump into the lightning round. We got about 8 or 10 questions here. We can go as in depth or as quickly as you need to go. But Jim, we'll start with you. This will be scored we're not grading on a curve here. It's pass fail. Biscuits or cornbread?
Impossible. I love both. Like seriously, I make both every day, and I love both. Impossible. Like if I'm eating, like a field peas and greens,
Biscuits.
it's got to be cornbread.
Biscuits.
But biscuits are very near and dear to my heart. It's like I say, we serve at my restaurant. We make biscuits every day, and we make cornbread pretty much every day. And so,
well, Jim,
that's a 0 in my column, right? That's a lost answer right there. But I'm choosing both.
Okay.
He's running for office.
Yeah, I feel like he is. I feel like you could be the next governor. Okay. Favorite po' boy?
I'll go oyster.
Oyster?
Shrimp.
Oyster. I mean, what did y'all order today?
I ordered a mix. I tried their fish because the server suggested it. She said, and I said, well, what about the shrimp? She said, get a half and half. They're both good. So
I had gumbo for lunch today.
He doesn't even love a po' boy enough to just order.
Yeah, that's I'm 2-0.
I was jealous
2-0 right now
when I saw the po' boys.
Yes, and they should always come fully dressed, Amy. I don't know what you're thinking. All right, first shrimp dish that you're like, okay, this is the last. I mean, I get to eat shrimp one way the rest of my life. What do you? This is your channeling your inner Bubba Gump.
I like shrimp ceviche.
Shrimp ceviche. That's pretty good.
It's a good call. For me, I love fried shrimp, but I think I would have to say, these I'm doing terrible at the lightning round.
3-0.
Yeah. I'm losing clearly. No, for me, I really love grilled shrimp, but I also really love the sous vide shrimp. There's lots of cool things to do with shrimp. Like I've made pasta out of shrimp before, which is awesome. But I think if I were just like the one, I don't know, pickled shrimp, boiled shrimp.
All right, let's take a quick sidebar.
Okay.
Who cooked the shrimp tonight?
Which shrimp?
The ones that had the head on and
the grilled shrimp.
That was a combination. I did the marinade, gave them to Russell. Russell grilled them. I made the sauce.
So those are Auburn all the way shrimps.
Yeah, Auburn.
All Auburn. The shrimp
4-0.
were awesome. The shrimp were awesome.
Those shrimp were incredible.
They were really
beautiful
good.
Flavor.
Yep.
I mean, the presentation on that was just like, oh.
Yeah, the presentation was the shrimp itself, but we took fresh garlic, olive oil, Calabrian chilies, and a little bit of Italian parsley and sea salt and rubbed them around, let them sit for a little bit, and then put them on the grill. And then we made like a...
And Russell didn't overcook those bad boys. He had them
They were
perfect.
really good.
Yeah, I told him, I go, these are going back in the oven. This is banquet style. You want these just seared and off. And he did it.
Yeah. Oh, they were
very good.
They were perfect. That's not a loss for Jim, but we're not okay. Anyhow, okay. Oyster dish. Favorite oyster dish.
Raw.
Mignonette on a cracker, horseradish. How do you take it?
I like it all those ways, but sort of like if I'm at a sort of like dive bar oyster place on the beach, I really just love a cracker and Tabasco. I will eat it in any way, any of the other
Tabasco
ways.
or Crystal?
No, and I know that the people in Louisiana don't agree with this statement, but I am a Tabasco fan of all of the Louisiana variety hot sauces. For me, it's got to be Tabasco.
Scott.
Grilled. Okay, I'll tell you, when I have a raw oyster, I feel like it's meant to be appreciated and savored for its individual qualities. And so it sort of makes me reluctant to put a lot of things with it. And I like to put things with, I'm a chef. So, I'll eat an apple or something like that, or, on the side, but most things I'm going to do something to.
Right.
So the grilled oyster,
It's too boring. You're just like, what?
you
crack
a
it open.
perfect peach or something. Yeah, it's great. But I like to take the oysters and then you're able to grill them. Number one, I think that the process of it gets that little bit of another quality to the oyster.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily, take away from the fresh seawater flavor, but it does give, another component to it. And I also think, like when I want to enjoy oysters with other people, I can get more people to enjoy a plate of grilled oysters with me than I can just raw oysters. Honestly.
See, you need to show up at a party with just a sack of oysters and a knife and you'll be like the most popular dude there.
Yes.
Right?
And that's some places, but there are those people who are like, I've never tried an oyster. I'm nervous about an oyster, all those things. And I think
if they're grilled, they're a great gateway to get them
they're
into
a gateway,
the thing.
right?
Well,
and I would say Rockefeller is a little too rich for me and you're relying on other ingredients. But grilled with a little bit of a flavored butter, like we do a chipotle butter, something like that, just to give it a little rehydrate the oyster and accompany it is pretty amazing.
I really love that, like the South Carolina style with where you have the big piece of metal and you heat up the metal and then you take the burlap sack and cover the oysters like that.
Right.
It's not called, they don't call it grilled, what they call them, steamed oysters. No, there's a name for that.
It's kind of a steam thing, but I've seen that equipment.
That's
a
really
Oyster
cool.
South or something they did a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to do it because you really are just like steaming them until they pop open. That burlap is holding the liquid in, and that's a really fun way to do them. But,
so he's changed his mind.
No. Raw is still my answer.
All right.
I gotta say, I've never had oyster dressing that I would like slap somebody over before today. I've had, some it's like, okay. But Jim came through on the oyster dressing tonight. We got to get that recipe, Jim. Don't forget to send that in because if you listen to the podcast and you're like, where's the oyster recipe, oyster dressing recipe? They're gonna want that. So, all right. So, favorite seafood dinner you've ever had? Is there a moment in your life when you had this seafood dinner that you remember that's like, oh, that was awesome?
As far as memorable in my mind forever, there was.
This isn't even fair because he's got 59 years to pull from. But
that's right.
We're gonna let you go first. Go ahead.
Well, it gives him a chance.
Hey, I'm emailing a recipe over here.
Okay. All right. He's looking up on the internet. Right?
He's Googling, what was my favorite seafood memory?
Yeah. You asked him about growing up and things he remembered. There's quite a few for me, but one of the seafood memories I remember most was we went in San Diego when there was a time when along the coast, the La Jolla shores, there was a lot of mussels growing on the rocks. And you could even have fires on the beach at that time. That's how old I am.
Yeah.
And we basically picked the mussels. We had a gallon of like Ernest and Julio white wine, 1 onion and about a pound of butter and a big pot. And we picked the mussels and kind of debearded them, put them in the pot with the butter and the wine and that, and just sat there and ate it with some bread. And as a kid, it was candy or something. I couldn't stop eating it. So that's one of the things I still sort of savor in my mind and enjoy. And, there was a little bit of garlic with it, but other than that, it was so simple, so good.
Scott also had access to wine as a kid. I like that. He's very good with his recipes. At 8 years old out there.
It was my parents.
Okay,
did
your
the
parents
whole thing.
were with you. Okay.
Yeah, it was my parents did the whole thing. I was just
Scott's got a bottle of Ernest.
An attendee. Yeah.
Walking down there, he got dropped off. No, I'm kidding. All right, Jim.
Okay, I've got a good one for this. My wife, who is a Chinese citizen, is a wonderful person. And the first time I went to China with her, we went to her hometown. And the first place that she took me she was like, this is a place that is American. You'll probably get, you understand it. And so we go to this it's kind of a divey looking place, but they've got like cool graphics painted on the walls in the dining room. I'm like, what's going on here? I mean, obviously I do not read or speak hardly any Chinese. And, we sit down at the tables and I noticed that the tables are covered in like white plastic trash bags. I'm like, okay, this seems vaguely familiar to me. And then we proceeded to have mountains of different types of Asian cooked crawfish, very much like we would have a crawfish boil here, but with very different kind of flavors than we're all used to having. And they bring out rubber gloves and they give you bibs and you get some chopsticks and then you just go to town on all the various crawfish
Wow.
that you can have. And it was something that was so, you go in to eat food in China, you're like, oh, this is going to be so different. American Chinese food isn't really like, unless you're in a city that has a real Chinatown, it's not really like what you get in China. But going there and having this crazy good crawfish experience is probably one of the most memorable and enjoyable seafood meals in my memory.
Wow. He went to China, Scott.
To have crawfish.
It's pretty awesome. All right. So, favorite beverage to celebrate an occasion?
Wine.
Champagne.
I mean, do you have a particular pour? A favorite wine? What's your favorite wine?
Well, if I'm celebrating a particular occasion, most of the time, if it's a big deal, I'm going to be with my wife. She loves Pinot Noir. I love Pinot Noir too. It's not like, I have a wider palate range than she does, but that's going to be her dream wine. So I would splurge on some really nice Pinot Noir and I would have a great evening. She'd be thrilled to celebrate with me over that, versus a beer or something else, or champagne wouldn't do it.
Scott's throwing a little shade, which is cool because you could throw shade because Jim's still wearing the sunglasses. So we're good. All right. So Jim, champagne, what are you getting?
Yeah, for me, I do have a favorite bottle, and it's not like one of these bottles that's crazy expensive, but it's not cheap either. For me, this label that's called A Margane, and they make a really great rosé. And it's one of those ones where I've been to a bunch of these grower tastings throughout the years. And for me, it's just the one that I tasted every single time. I'm like, this is just so spectacularly good. I don't really understand why people are spending, thousands of dollars on things just because they say Dom Perignon, when you can get a wine that's probably better and way more loved and cared for than those sort of big factory farms and champagne.
Yeah. So
for me, my favorite is this A Margane, and their rosé is awesome.
And is that from the Champagne region?
Oh yeah. It's real champagne. Okay. The good stuff for sure.
Just checking. All right. So I like that. So we did Pinot and Champagne, both of which are delicious. 1 year from today, Scott, where you and your wife are at dinner. What are you celebrating? What did you accomplish that you're proud of? 1 year from today, what are you going to do? What are you going to do this next year?
Hopefully, I'm fully staffed, and I'm celebrating
that you turned your phone off.
That I've cut my hours in half, something like that. I also would like to think that we'd be at a point where we could possibly look at another restaurant opening or concept.
Another concept.
Mm-hmm. Something maybe down here on the water.
Beach restaurant is always appealing until you meet the tourist. No, I'm just playing. Just playing.
Every time I've gone to Puerto Rico twice, and they have these bays that are they're just a spot, and some of them have a Venta or whatever, and nobody's in there, and it's $600 a month, and you get to live in Puerto Rico. I'm like, I go to the grocery store and I see pork butts for at the time $1.20 a pound, and I'm thinking, I could make this work. That lifestyle of being at the beach doesn't suck. So, Jim?
For me, in a year, I will just be happy to be celebrating, hopefully another year of being a successful restaurateur, another year of still breathing oxygen. I better knock on some wood. And
these chairs are plastic, but I'll give it to you.
The plastic chairs count, right?
It's molded. It's molded so it feels like wood.
Yeah. I need to do definitely a better job of embracing the things that I love about living and life and being in this world that have been so hard over the past couple of years, and learning to celebrate with those who you care about the most is what I would like to be celebrating in a year.
That's really good. And you were talking about, another year successfully under your belt, having a restaurant. This is your first baby in the restaurant world that's yours, right? So
yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot still going on there with everything, as we talked about the speakers and just all the little things. So that's big. That's big.
Yeah. It's been for all of my career, I've worked for amazing chefs. I've, cooked for governors. It's always been my dream to be the boss, to own my own restaurant, to not be accountable to anyone else, and to be the one who makes that a cool work environment. Like I've worked for chefs who are, jerks to work for. I've worked for chefs who were so awesome. They motivated you every second that they walked in the door. And for me, I always wanted to make a place where the people who work there can be as proud of it as I am. The place where people are happy to come to work instead of like, you see people walking in the doors and rolling their eyes and being upset that they're going to have to make money, And so for me, it's been always been my passion to sort of have my own place. And it happened. I have my own place starting January 7th of 2020. And even though all of those things were there and have been there throughout the whole pandemic and the ongoing pandemic, it's been a lot. And I am just, there's never any quit. There's never any like backing off.
Yeah.
It is the place that I want it to be, but it's a struggle every day.
Yeah, for sure. Being a business owner is tough all the time. There's no easy road on that. All right. So we're having dinner. You can invite 3 people, living or dead, to come to dinner. Who do you bring, Scott?
Have you asked this question before to anybody?
I have. We're going to see if you changed.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I know that I'm sure that I would have said Jesus Christ, and I definitely would want my wife there.
Okay.
The third one, I'm going to have to think about that for a minute. That's a great question.
All right, Jim, while he's thinking.
Wait, this is such a giant question. I was having a hard time deciding like which way I like shrimp. Picking out like your favorite historical characters. No, I'm going to include my wife as a +1, so not on that list. But I do think that probably some.
Oh,
good.
I'm gonna say, boy, I don't even know. Like it would be awesome to have dinner with like Cleopatra and let's see here. I'm gonna go Cleopatra. What makes a good dinner party? Julia Child, and let's go for.
So you're going to go Snoop Dogg or Martha Stewart next? I'm trying to decide.
I will say that I've been a giant Martha Stewart fan for my entire professional career and still love her very much to this day. But I think I'm going to stick a little bit more historical since we already have one culinarian on there.
We go.
I'm going to go with.
Who's Cleopatra going to want to sit next to? That's really the question, right?
Yeah. No, it's not. She's going to want to sit next to Julia Child, right? Okay. And my third is going to be, I was trying to think of
should we institute a timer? What do you think?
Yeah, we should have a little egg timer.
Time is over. No, I'm going to say, I was trying to think of a cool president that no one would ever pick. Like, I'm going to go with Chester Garfield.
Well, if we're picking presidents, I think
you got a third.
I got a third, right? It'd be either George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. But I think I'd probably do George Washington.
There you go. Excellent work, gentlemen. Well, look, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you all for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah. Hey, wait, can I say one thing else?
Yes,
one additional thing. I want to say that ever since the oil spill, and Scott was mentioning this earlier, that the Gulf seafood in general, not just Alabama, but Gulf seafood in general, got a really bad rap for a long time. People just didn't think it was safe, and they weren't sure about it. And we're so far removed from the oil spill now that people don't really think about it. But the Alabama Seafood Marketing Commission was formed really in response just to let people know that seafood is safe, seafood is delicious. There are lots of people who are taking good care to make sure that the product that is harvested from these waters are not here.
Like the oysters we couldn't eat today.
Make it to your table in a way in which is safe. And it is so good to be a part of, helping sponsor this event and being a part of other seafood events that, people don't even think about the oil spill anymore. Now it's just about showing people how great the quality of what we harvest from our waters, how great it is.
Completely.
Yeah, the narrative has changed completely, and it's because of people like EATYALL and other chefs who are willing to take the step out, and consumers going out and feeling like, where can I buy Alabama shrimp? And what grocery stores carry it? And every grocery store could carry Alabama shrimp if you asked them to, and if enough of their patrons asked them to. So it's really just about making sure that if you're a patron of a restaurant, or if you're a chef, or if you're a consumer in general, just asking for it. Because, we've heard people say, oh, well, we can't, shrimp has been hard to find lately. The answer to that question is no. The good shrimp you've always had to pay money for. And you just need to realize that if your seafood is coming from Vietnam or South America, chances are good that it has no quality control. It's not anything you want to eat, and it's not supporting your neighbors. So really, I just wanted to say thank you all very much for supporting Alabama seafood, and it's been a pleasure to work with y'all on this.
Thank you. It has been a fantastic chef camp, and I hope we get to do this again sometime, because this was amazing. You guys have been amazing. The food and all the fun has been amazing. And now we're into Friday because it's after midnight. So we're in our third day of chef camp. Cheers to that, guys. Hopefully we see you back again soon.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Eat Y'all podcast, hosted by Eat Y'all founder and chief relationship officer, Andy Chapman. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you'd join us in our mission to save family farms by subscribing and leaving a review. Even better, share this episode and follow us on your favorite social media account at Let's Eat Y'all.